A couple of days back, a middle-aged man entered my OPD, came to my clinic. He sat down on the chair and he said, "Doctor, I have a lot of money. I have enough money that if I do not work even for a day for next 50 years, both me as well as my sons would have no financial trouble at all. But one thought keeps on troubling me, one thought keeps on bugging me, and that thought is, what will happen in the 51st year?" And this guy is not an exception. Often we see people who are very rich, very wealthy, have a lot of material possessions, but they are unhappy, unsatisfied. Now, to be fair, this particular gentleman had anxiety disorder and he got treated for the same, but that raises an important question. Does money really make you happy? Does money really bring satisfaction? Now, you must have experienced it yourself, or you must have seen this thing happening in somebody around you. People, when they get promotions or when they change company and there's a significant increase in the amount of money they make, their levels of satisfaction or happiness does not change much. Say if you're a guy who makes 50,000 rupees a month and suddenly you get a much better job and you start making say 1 lakh a month or 1.5 lakhs a month, in all likelihood your phone will become better, your car will become bigger, but the level of your satisfaction is going to remain the same. In fact, some research has been done on this. A big research was done in United States of America, and they found that the American economy, GDP per se, increased by 6 folds from 1950 to 2000, and the income of an average American also became double, but the level of happiness, the level of satisfaction of the American population did not change at all. And the study was done in America, but in all likelihood the results in any other population would be the same. So why is it so? If all of us are running after money, if all of us are chasing money, why doesn't it is bringing us happiness? There's another important theory. There's a theory which is called as the theory of hedonic treadmill. If you Google it, you'll find it. Now, this theory of hedonic treadmill, the term hedonism is basically used to refer to pleasure. This theory of hedonic treadmill says that the happiness level of an individual usually varies within a range. Even if a really good event were to happen to him, or even if a really bad event were to happen in his life, his happiness level will change for some time, but after some time the happiness will come back into the exact same range from where everything started. Why is it so? Why cannot money bring us happiness? The answer is the fact that most of us presume that if our material possessions become much better, if for example, if I think that if I start driving a much better car, or if I start wearing a much better brand, or if I start living in a much bigger house, my happiness level will improve. This is what most of us presume. But in reality, it's not what you possess, but whether what you possess and what your mind expects, whether it matches or not, that determines the level of happiness. So for example, if I'm a villager and all I aim for is a bicycle, because if I have a bicycle, the task of getting water to my house becomes much easier. If all I desire is a bicycle, and if somebody gives me a bicycle, I am the happiest guy on the earth. But say you are a guy who drives a sedan car or a SUV car, but what you want from life is a luxury car. Maybe you want a BMW, maybe you want an Audi, maybe you want a Jaguar. And if you don't have it, you are unsatisfied. So me, despite just possessing a bicycle, I'm much more happier than you who is driving a sedan car. Now what happens is, even if we were to get better things, even say if you were driving a sedan car and because of some reason you get a BMW, in all likelihood, the expectation of your mind will further balloon up. Probably now your mind will want maybe a Lamborghini, or maybe your mind will now want a bungalow. And again, you are back to the square one. The expectation and reality is again mismatching. So this is the reason, because expectations and reality are almost in a state of mismatch. We are almost always in a state of unhappiness or dissatisfaction. So what's the way out? Is there a way out? Should we all become spiritual? Should we all become sannyasis? Should we all become sadhus? Or in other words, should we all stop chasing money? Should we all stop aiming to make more money? I think no. The desire to make more money is not a bad desire. Why? The desire to make more money might be called as a shallow desire, but it still gives your life a purpose. When you get up in the morning and when you think that, okay, I have to work hard because I have to reach a certain level, that drives you, that gives you a reason to live, that gives your life a meaning. And living a meaningless life is much more painful than running, chasing, staying forever in the pursuit of money. So desire to make money has its own benefits, but we can rationalize it. We can rationalize it so that we are not always in the state of unhappiness or dissatisfaction. So how do we do so? Now, we may not need a philosopher or a spiritual guide to tell us the answer. Maybe the child who is living in your house or who is living the next door may be able to give you an answer. How? You must have noticed that if you ask a child, a kid of say 8 years old, 9 years old or 10 years old, if you ask him what do you want and how much money do you want, he usually comes up with I want 100 rupees. And then when you ask him what would you do with those 100 rupees, he has an answer. He'll tell you that I'll spend 10 rupees to buy a car, 50 rupees to buy a toy car, and 50 rupees to go and use a ride. His goal is defined. But if you ask an adult how much money do you want, he'll come up with a random figure. He'll say I want 5 lakhs a month or 10 lakhs a month. But when you ask him what will he do of that money, he usually does not have an answer. And probably there lies the solution to this problem. Rather than running after a mythical figure, rather than running after a random number, the money that we desire for ourselves should be well defined. You should ask yourself, how much money do you want to make by the end of the year, by defining whatever things you want to possess at the end of the year. So if, for example, if you want to buy a new phone, maybe a new car, and maybe one holiday trip to some country, you'll have to add up the expenses that you're expecting and then come to a figure. And mind you, this figure is usually much lesser than the random figure that would pop up in your mind if you don't consider these things. Now, there are multiple advantages to this approach. The biggest advantage is it is defined and it is much lesser than that random figure. So that by the end of the year, if you're able to make that much money, you go ahead and buy those stuff. That is why you wanted to make all the money. There is another important advantage of this approach. When you ask yourself what do you want to achieve, what do you want to possess, your mind usually does not throw away random things. For example, if you're a middle class guy and I ask you what do you want to possess by the end of the year, and if you say that I want to buy a big plot in the central part of the city, your mind will tell you that that is not a realistic expectation. It will junk it off. So we are able to make, or we are able to desire rational stuff that we can actually achieve, and that further brings down the amount that we are running after to a reasonable amount. So rather than running after a random figure, we start aiming for something which is more reasonable, more realistic, and much more achievable. This helps us in achieving happiness and experiencing happiness rather than just procrastinating it. Most of people, most of us, most of the human beings, most of the adults keep on procrastinating their happiness, that if I achieve this number, I'll be satisfied. But that number, but you are never able to achieve that number because that number keeps on changing. So when you approach this defined approach, one of the biggest advantages is it is defined, of course, and it is much more achievable. You don't have to procrastinate happiness. You can experience it as you move ahead in the life. So probably this approach might help you in achieving at least a particular state of satisfaction, and maybe it may help you to get out of the rat race, never ending rat race. Thank you.